2015 Polaris Sportsman 570 SP edition. The 200-hour service. The only thing different from the 100-hour service is this manual wants you to change the brake fluid. So we're going to change the spark plug, which is a NGK 95897. We're going to change the oil, and I use the extreme duty oil, which is the 10W50 PS4 extreme duty oil change kit, 2 quarts, and an oil filter. And we got the front demand drive fluid, and then the AGL transmission fluid. And that is what we're going to be working on today. Couple tools, 3/8 ratchet, and a set of Allen heads to remove the drain plugs on the oil, the transmission, and the front demand drive fluid. So we'll go ahead and, and I almost forgot replacing the air filter as well. So we're going to go ahead and get started. All right, so I start at the front and going to break the drain plug for the demand drive fluid loose. Just get your oil drain pan over here and drain it into it. Then next you want to inspect your plug and make sure there's not a lot of metal shavings on it. And they also recommend that if you're using your 4-wheel drive with the downhill assist, that you change this every 25 hours, but I don't use it that much, so I just change it every 100 hours for me, because I don't personally use it a whole lot. Now if you don't have a front winch, I find it easier to fill the demand drive fluid by removing this front little grill here. There's 2 T25 screws that you have to pull out here, then you just get a flathead screwdriver and pop these little tabs out. That off, then you can get in there to fill it quite a bit easier. Alright, so now I'm going to remove the fuel plug to fill this back up. And now once it's all drained out, I'm going to go ahead and put the bottom drain plug back in and fill it up, and this holds 9 ounces. Alright, so now we're going to be under the 4-wheeler and drain the oil from the engine. The drain plug's located in the center, right underneath here. Break it loose, and, get your drain pan underneath it and drain the oil out, and then next we'll remove the oil filter. As you can see, it's obviously draining kind of slow, so to speed it up you can just come over here and remove the oil dipstick. And this will be my first time to change the oil since I had this new heat shield installed, so we'll see how that goes. It's going to be a little bit harder to get down in here. Move that. Now we're picking up the pace on the draining. Alright, the oil filter is kind of hard to get to probably won't be able to see me get it on camera very well, but it's actually located right back in there. It's pretty hard to get to it, but I don't know if you can see it or not. You can see it's right behind that engine mount, but it's kind of a pain to get to, so I'm going to go ahead and remove it. Alright, so I got it cracked loose. If you just crack it and let it drain, it will drain out this bottom hole in the frame right there until it's completely empty, and then you can just go ahead and remove it so you don't make as big a mess. Alright, next I'm going to drain the transmission, and it's on the right hand side rear, and it says drain on it. So I crack this loose. So we're going to go ahead and remove this drain plug. And also make sure that when you're removing the drain plug for the engine oil, that the copper washer comes with it. And it's a good idea to inspect these O-rings also on the transmission and the four-wheel drive. Make sure they're not damaged, or it will leak if they're damaged. So I'm going to clean these plugs up and get ready to fill everything back up. Alright, so now I'm going to remove the air box lid to replace the air filter. And just pop these 6 tabs over. Just remove it. Then you'll need a flathead screwdriver to remove the air filter. Remove that, then you want to remove this screen and wash it. And this air filter doesn't look too bad. You could probably reuse it, but I only put about 100 hours a year on here, and they're only like $24, so cheap insurance. So I'll just go ahead and toss it and put a new one on. But if you didn't want to, I'm sure you could probably reuse it, because it's just, I mean, it's just not hardly dirty at all. But they do recommend every 100 hours replacing it, so I'm going to follow the manual so I can make this thing last as long as possible with the price these things cost nowadays. I'll just take my shop vac and vacuum all the grass and dirt out of this box. Also, if you ever get water in here, there's two little, or I guess one, I should say, one little plug rubber plug you can pull, and it will actually drain the water out of this box. But I'm going to go ahead and wash this and get ready to put the new air filter on. Alright, now I'm going to remove the spark plug, which is located on the top of the engine underneath this rubber boot. Simply just pull it straight up, pull it out of the way, tuck it back somewhere. I find it easiest just to use the spark plug tool that came with the four-wheeler in the toolkit. Just drop that down in there, make sure it seats on there good, and then I'll get a socket that fits this in, and then go ahead and remove the spark plug. Alright, so the socket I use is an 18mm. I broke it loose, so now I'm just going to remove the spark plug. Alright, so I got the new spark plug, NGK, that's the number on it. And go ahead and put you don't have to, but I like to go ahead and put a little dielectric grease on it, just so in case it gets any water up there. I'm just gonna put it back in the end of this tool, drop it down there and tighten it up. Before I reinstall it, I like to go ahead and inspect it, make sure there's no cracks or dry rot going on in the cord here. Mine looks pretty good, so I'm gonna go ahead and... Alright, so I get my torque wrench out here, set it to 9 foot-pounds, and that's what the spark plug torques to. Remove this and reinstall the boot. Alright, so I got my pre-screened all clean, dried off. Now we're going to install our air filter. Just take the screen and put it back over the filter. Make sure you get your air box nice and cleaned out, and then clean the surface of this intake and install your air filter. Make sure you install it with the open end in the intake. Make sure it's seated on there properly, and then tighten back down the hose clamp. So a couple other things we can look at while we got the seat off up here is it wants you to inspect the throttle body intake duct, which we did. Check the engine breather valve. Inspect and clean, which is this little valve in here in the air box, and I cleaned that, made sure it was okay. Replace the air filter element, which we did. Let's see here. Check the wiring. All my wiring up here looks pretty good. I didn't see anything that's damaged or cracked. Check the fuel lines. Fuel lines here. Running in, none of them appear to be leaking or damaged or cracked or anything. Intake boots, none of them look dry rotted. Everything looks great. Spark plug, which we changed. Fuel system, which wants you to cycle the key, pressurized fuel pump, check for leaks at the cap and the lines. It wants you to replace the fuel lines every 2 years. But my fuel lines are in great shape because I store my machine indoors and it doesn't sit outside to where anything can get on them, and they're still nice and flexible and don't have any cracks in them. So I'm not going to replace mine yet, even though this machine is over 2 years old. I just don't see the need in replacing them at this time. A couple other things to check. The exhaust. You check, make sure you don't have any loose clamps or anything on your exhaust. Basically, you're just checking to make sure none of these bolts or brackets or any of this is loose, or you have any exhaust leaks, which I don't. And we'll pull and clean the spark arrestor out. I'll show you how to do that here in a minute. No loose brackets. Everything appears to be good on mine. Check the exhaust up here. Make sure it's not loose or leaking, and mine's not. I've looked at it and it's not leaking any fluids out the engine. So we're pretty squared away on that. Another thing I want you to do is check the coolant, which I'll show you how to do that. You check it in your little overflow reservoir, and mine's of course between the min and the max, which is fine. And then I'll show you how to actually check the radiator up here in just a minute. That manual recommends replacing that every 60 months. I haven't had this for 60 months yet, but I plan on replacing that probably next year. Alright, so there's 4 T25 torque screws that you got to remove there, and there, and then remove this rubber seal, and then it just pops up out of there. Sometimes it can be kind of difficult. Set that out of the way. And here's your coolant. And again, mine looks good. It doesn't appear to have any signs of leaking. Cap looks good. It's full. Make sure we put it on. Also, here's your fuses too. If you ever have any fuses blow out, they're under this cover as well. Check the wiring up here. Nothing appears to be loose. Check the fan. It spins good, doesn't have any noise. So put this cover back on, and we'll call that good for that. The next, I'll start refilling the engine oil and the transmission and the front demand drive fluid.